Where is it here? I guess I'm just passing this down here. That's, thank you.
Okay,
Pass it around, let it get to Toby.
I'd like to call the reconvened regular business meeting of September 25th, 2017 to order. We have two items on the agenda. The first one is ordinance 1466.
Okay. I move to adopt ordinance number 1466, an ordinance establishing a volunteer fire service credit program, authorizing local tax credits for members of active volunteer fire companies, and establishing administrative procedures and appeals.
Second.
Mr. President, I'd move to amend that motion and increase the number to $1,000.
Second.
Motion to increase to $1,000. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
Nay.
Nay.
Nays
Roll
have it.
call. Let's do a roll call. We're required to do a roll call and a split vote. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
I abstain.
Ward 3,
Aye.
Ward 4,
Nay.
Ward 5,
Nay.
Ward 6,
Nay.
Ward 7.
Nay.
Mr. Chairman, the vote was 2 in favor, 4 against, and 1 abstention. The motion fails.
Okay, we'll move back to the original motion. We'll vote on that motion. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I abstain as a member of the volunteer fire company for 61 years.
Sometimes it seems like that.
I think you were right the first time.
61 years, I have to abstain.
Timeless, that's what they call it.
Okay,
Timeless.
Dog years.
item number 3. So we have item number 2 is passed, and item number 3.
I move to adopt resolution number 17 of the 2017 series, a resolution establishing the annual criteria that a volunteer must meet to be certified under the Town of McCandless Volunteer Fire Service Credit Program to claim local tax credits.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote on that motion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I abstain from that also. So the motion is carried. Item number 4.
Is it appropriate to ask a question, just an informational question at this point?
Chair.
If, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what is the amount of wages someone would have to earn to be able to take advantage of $1,000 credit?
$100,000 a year.
Okay.
No, 200.
200.
200, yeah, as I thought. So that's, unless we have a $200,000 person in the fire company, we would be,
That's right.
right, okay.
Be
I-
mute.
I understand.
But the firemen had asked for it at the last meeting, that's why we...
Yeah, well, I
Are
mean,
we
it seems,
discussing a motion that we didn't have discussion on when there was a second on the motion
No.
now?
nope, I
Okay.
just wanted information to,
Okay.
He asked for
A
a point of
calculation.
information, a point of clarification.
Okay, because there wasn't any discussion on that motion, so I just trying to keep up.
Need a motion to adjourn.
We need a, I know that. We're waiting on
Mr.
a
Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
second,
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move over to the zoning committee.
I call the zoning committee to order. Item number 2, review public hearing on an ordinance tentatively identified as ordinance number 1467, an ordinance amending ordinance number 704 proposed by Vincentian Collaborative to change the zoning districts of properties located at 976 East Arcadia Drive and 9399 Babcock Boulevard from zoning district I, institutional, and R2, 1 and 2 family residential, to R6, elderly housing district, and amending the town's zoning map accordingly. The rezoning request would facilitate the construction of 2 buildings linked together containing 90 independent living apartments with various indoor and outdoor amenities. The ordinance is scheduled for a vote by town council at its October 23rd, 2017 regular business meeting.
Okay, we have with us tonight Nick Mazaka, Edgar Smith, and Rocco Negrino. Nick is the CEO of Vincentian Collaborative. Edgar and Rocco are the architects and engineer of the site. This site, as we stated, is located at the intersection of Coomer Road and Babcock Boulevard. It's the site of the former Vincentian, former Regency nursing home. There are 2 lots right now, and there is a split zoning lot. This is lot 1 is zoned R2 residential. Lot 2 is split right across here, and this part is institutional, and this part is zoned R2 residential. Both lots have to be rezoned because our zoning ordinance does not permit independent living in an institutional zone district, and there are too many units for it to be zoned R2. And we went through a concept plan. Edgar, can you switch to the concept plan? And as the motion states, there are 2 buildings that are linked together by a sort of a reception hall and an entrance. And there's going to be a lot of landscaping, there are 3 watersheds here that there will be stormwater detention in all 3 watersheds. Neighbors expressed concerns about existing water runoff problems. The site is going to great lengths to try to address those existing runoff problems by trying to capture some underground springs and bring them to this facility. There's a watershed here and a watershed, I think it's right here. Is that right, Rocco? Is the other one over this way?
Correct.
So all 3 of those, and we have to discuss that. I'm just bringing that to your attention because that was a major discussion among the neighbors when they had meetings with the neighbors. And in my few years here, we've had lots of discussions with the neighbors. So anyways, this is the concept plan that was presented. We had a public hearing on this at the last business meeting in September.
Are there no sidewalks on that?
There will be sidewalks. If this plan is approved, if this rezoning is approved, they will be out of that very shortly with an entire site plan. There will be sidewalks, yes.
Now, am I correct in thinking that we have a 15-foot, McCandless is a 15-foot right-of-way beside the private section of East Arcadia? Half of the land went to the neighbors across the street, and half of it was, is that not correct, Toby? Something to that effect?
You're talking about the private portion of East Arcadia Drive?
Right. If
Well,
it's not
whatever-
half of that?
Well, whatever width that was laid out at, which was, I would hazard a guess that it was 40-foot right-of-way
Okay, so,
in the time frame when this was laid out, then if that 40 feet is not turned into a public street within 21 years after its proposal to be one, then the properties on each side, 20 feet on each side of a 40-foot right-of-way, would go back to the property owners on either side with rights reserved. One ordinary right would be the right to traverse the property. That means on foot.
right,
And
not bicycle?
probably not, but that'd be a question for somebody a little bit, more legal experience than I have. But just in general terms, you could traverse. And then the responsibility goes along with the right to maintain the right of way, in whatever state the individual wants, as long as someone can traverse the property.
Right,
think
because
this
I've
is
had
an-
multiple complaints from people that can't walk through there from one side to the other because of the way it's marked now. And I was wondering if a sidewalk wouldn't be on the 20-foot side of Vincentian's a good idea to consider in the plans.
There is no public right to that property. There is not a public right to it. Toby just
Only
pointed out
those in
the
the
21
plan,
years.
only the right to traverse belongs to those in the
You,
plan of
you and I
lots.
would not have a right to traverse it.
Okay. But most of the people who are traversing it would be in one of the two plans, either on the Coomer side or the,
And
But
I
if
think,
I guess I think you're thinking if there's a public improvement, like a sidewalk,
yeah, there's not a right
then
for
others
a
may think
public
that they're
improvement.
invited to do that, so that,
And
could
the
be
other
an issue.
part is, and I don't know the answer to this question, it has to be, this property has to have been part of the plan that created this right of way for them to have access to it. I don't know the answer to that question.
will you be able to look into that?
Yes, be glad to.
And my statement is, it's a generally when we talked after the meeting last week, it's generally 2 weeks. That's a generally accepted principle. Someone like Bill Reese would probably, or an attorney would have to look and see if there's any other effect on the property. It's not always good to just assume that. That's what I was telling you is that it's just a general principle.
We'd have to look at this specific one, but generally, you do retain the right to go back and forth on the property if you're an adjacent landowner.
Now, I did make one other comment. I'm recalling that I'm not sure I've seen it, but I've heard of it, that the town actually vacated that
Public road?
unopened public, so that's a more significant action. What I was talking about is if nothing happens to that unopened right-of-way, unopened street, the usual practice is it reverts back to the property owners on each side. But I'm recalling that it was told to me that there was a vacation of that right-of-way by the town, which is a more serious action.
So, but you don't know what happens when they vacate it?
I'm not sure about that, and that starts to get beyond
And
my
so I've
pay
always
grade.
wondered what the purpose of the vacation was, since the public has no right to it anyways. I'm not sure what the purpose of the vacation was. Some
Yeah.
lawyers like to have that just as an added supplement, but we'll look into it.
Yeah.
And I think
But
that-
Arcadia is a massive plan, so you would think that they would have the ability to take the shortcut to get over to the park, for example, if they wanted to walk down to the park or.
And the other part to that is that's typically a civil matter.
Right.
That's not something the
Doesn't
town would
usually
be
involve
involved
us.
in.
All right.
But we'll look into that. That's a good comment. I don't have anything else. I don't know if there are any other questions.
I'm trying to find my,
Oh, you need, here,
no, I had the,
you can read it there if you want.
here we are, hidden by the map. Okay, Item number 3, review the preliminary and final application of Vincentian Collaborative Systems for a subdivision lot consolidation of its property located at 9399 Babcock Boulevard, which is at the intersection of Coomer Road and Babcock Boulevard. This application proposes to consolidate 2 lots into 1 parcel and 1 zoning lot. And that's the map before you there. Could you elaborate on that, Bruce?
The property line consists of, could you go back to the first slide? Edgar? One more. There we, oh, is that the first one?
No.
Go backwards. That one, yes. So these are the 2 lots that exist right now. The proposal is to remove this lot line. And the entire lot would then be zoned, if this is approved by town council, the entire lot would be zoned R6.
Bruce, is it your opinion that rezoning this, or doing the subdivision, and then putting this type of facility on there is an improvement in that property, improvement in the stormwater drainage, just an overall improvement for the parcel to the town?
Yes, based on the number of complaints I've had about the stormwater, especially over the years that I've been here, and going to visit some of the neighbors, especially the neighbors down on Whitley. They don't show up on this map, and they're not even adjacent, but the water does go down through their driveways, actually, and it's created some problems. They've done their best to try to accommodate those problems. So from a stormwater perspective, from what I've seen here, I believe that they have gone to great lengths to not only capture the stormwater, but also underground water, spring water, with the plan that Rocco's developed. So we have yet to review and approve that plan, but it's important that they are trying to do that. There will also be, with a greatly reduced number of employees, there will also be less traffic. I think they employ, 272 employees at next?
277.
277 employees, and we're going to be down to four, and that's over the entire day.
And I might add, when they go over that, make sure that somebody looks at that Babcock Boulevard storm system where that's.
Oh, absolutely, yes, Rocco's already looking into that. Yeah, and we have to review that too. I expressed my concerns as well as your concerns about that.
It is pretty important.
Absolutely, absolutely is. And PennDOT has to approve it also.
Well, it's their system.
It's their system and their road. This one up here, this one up here is a part of the county system. That's not even a third of the entire site.
There'll be a vote taken on this when?
On October 23rd at
Okay.
the council's regular
Right.
business meeting. And I would suggest that we maintain that order of the rezoning and then the subdivision for consolidation. There's no use consolidating if we don't do the rezoning.
I was going to ask you, what is, in the current situation, what is Whitley Drive contributing to the?
Whitley is impacted because of the existing stormwater runoff,
Coming from which direction?
coming from mostly up through here, I believe. When I followed it down, it actually seemed to come this way.
Coming across the lot or down Alfred
Coming
Drive?
across the lot, then across another lot, then down onto the house on Whitley.
Okay.
Does that come across Babcock Boulevard?
No, it's perpendicular to Babcock,
You know,
close
sheet
to
flow.
perpendicular.
See it.
Yes, it is sheet flow.
Okay, so we move on to number,
Should say mostly.
Mostly sheet flow.
is there anything else on this item? If not, let's move to the review, item number 4. Review the subdivision application for a lot line revision for the Blake Grubbs Road plan of lots located at 10560 Grubbs Road, across from Gulfside Drive, and between Grubbs Road and Country Lane. We've had a fair amount of discussion with this, and this is basically a situation in which the contiguous neighbors want to realign certain lots, and it's not as complex as it looks like it is there, but it's, you want to run it?
Yeah, I just need to line these up. If you could get somebody to hold that, or not hold it, just, I'm sorry, not hold it, just pin it. Hey, this is in your plan, thanks, I appreciate your help.
It's just handling plans.
Yeah, just fits in
Why don't
well.
we just go over there?
Yeah.
Let's drag them out.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. Take care. I'll see you October 23rd.
See you 23rd.
Yeah.
like a big puzzle. I was gonna give a prize to the planning commission member that could figure out exactly what was going on with this. So what this is the original lot. Now, you gotta follow this one. Who am I blocking everybody here? The original lot starts at this corner on Grubbs Road and follows this blue line through here, comes down through here, over to here, down through here, up to the main lot, or across the main lot, up to the corner, up to here, and back down here. Basically, there's, I believe, a 25-foot part of the parcel. It's not dedicated for anything, it's just part of the parcel. But it is part of the parcel. This is the master parcel, the house to the master parcel right here. So, the neighbors got together, they didn't want anybody to develop there, and I probably talked to 6 or 7 developers who had a lot of different ideas as to how to build there. It went from, I think, 6 lots to 12 lots, people thought they could get on that parcel with a public road. So, the idea is, and I don't remember the numbers, and I can't see the numbers. I'll come back over here. So I should have turned that off. Okay, so we start with lot 1. Every place I've X'd out the blue line. This is lot number 1. So I've X'd out the blue line here. The pink parcel will become lot 1. Lot 2, that little 25-foot right-of-way, or that 25-foot piece of ground, is going to be attached to lot 2. So lot 2 will be the green. And lot 3 is the remnant parcel of the master parcel. There's a nice, almost square. And I'll go to lot 6. Lot 6 is purchasing this. It'll square off their lot. And this plot line gets X'd out. This is where the tricky part is. We have lot 5. Lot 5 is, did I put this outside the counter? It's not.
Looks to me like, should that be at the top?
Yeah, I have it turned around.
It's upside
Right.
down.
Whole thing. Anyways, now I'm having trouble finding the lot 5.
I think that piece is upside down.
Yep, I got the match lines turned around. Should have the whole thing turned around. But anyways, lot 5, well, no, these parcels are in the right spot, and this is the right of way. There's still something missing.
I think that bottom piece maybe is upside down.
You've got lot 1 down there at the bottom,
Yeah,
in the
which
pig.
It looks like it needs
They're
to.
down by your wrist. Keep going to the bottom.
one's- Yeah, I see that, I wrote that for lot 1. Where do you write this? Told you it was a puzzle.
You said it was a puzzle.
There you go.
But there's no match line here, that's the problem. Yeah, there we go, I got it flipped over, I'm sorry.
It's on the other side of the page, okay.
Yep, there we go. No wonder I couldn't find lot 5.
You see a piece of the puzzle, it'll drive you crazy every time.
Yep. Okay, now, lot 5 is the puzzle. Lot 5 did not want to be involved in the subdivision, but he does happen to be the son of the owner of lot 4. Lot 4 did want to be part of the subdivision because he didn't want anything to be built here. So lot 5 agreed to give back to his father this 50-foot piece of ground. And that 50-foot piece of ground will then attach to lot 4, so lot 4, as was described by one of the planning commission members, looks somewhat like a dumbbell, with this being the handle. So the net result is that there will be no new building lots on the plan. And we now have to accomplish the neighbor's goal of not having any additional development, They've come to an agreement on this. It's nice to see so many neighbors get together and come to an agreement like that. That really was a great thing to see that happen. So I know that's confusing, but let's start over. Lot 1 will be the pink piece. Lot 2 will be the green piece. Lot 3 is the remnant parcel of the original master parcel. Lot 4 is the confusing parcel, to me confusing parcel, because then it is part of the, we'll call it the dumbbell. And Lot 5 is the remnant parcel from which the 50-foot was subdivided. And Lot 6 is then the yellow parcel.
At the bottom of, or I guess southern end of Lot 4, I guess that is, there appears to be a dotted line rendering of a cul-de-sac street, but where is the terminus?
Okay.
Where does it meet what road?
Okay, this is Canterwood Drive, and it intersects with Grubbs Road.
Oh, okay, because
And
And
it exists now?
I should point out
It's a
that,
public road.
and I should point out that Country Lane is also here. Country Lane is not a public road. But since there are no new building lots and this lot exists, the idea that we're increasing it doesn't change anything. They can still build on Lot 6. It doesn't change anything. They don't have an immediate intention of building on it, but it was not about that.
Well, that sliver of Lot 4, 50 feet wide by whatever, is not a buildable lot, is that correct?
That is correct. In order to have a buildable lot, there has to be 100 foot of frontage on a public road. And none of these remnant parcels qualify for that. Anything else?
Any questions? Explain to them why it's a dumbbell. That was a little obscure.
One of the planning commission,
Yeah.
this is the handle for the dumbbell, this is the weight, and this is the other weight.
Okay.
It's sort of if you were doing curls, it'd be a little bit
It'd
difficult.
be an odd shaped dumbbell.
So
Yeah.
the unmarked plan to the right of Lot 4 and Lot 5 is the farmhouse.
Yes. Yes.
So there's already houses behind the farmhouse?
Yes, there are
That's
two
the
houses
one that
behind the
you're-
farmhouse.
Oh, guess you can't see them from the road at all.
And if you look carefully, this is absolutely beautiful.
Well, I know, I've actually been in that house.
Yeah, it's a
Williams's house. The original owner was Williams.
Yes. Yep. It's a converted barn.
Well,
Yeah.
the back side of the barn has had a major addition put on it.
That's, the addition looks huge on it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Bruce, can I just say one thing?
We have Dana Wettergreen here from, she
Come up to the
is,
microphone, please, wherever you are.
she is lot
We are
one.
not.
She's purchasing a major part of it.
It's not being amplified, just recorded.
Okay, that's fine. I see in the notes here that it says 10, and you had said 10560 Country, oh, I'm sorry, that's my address. Grubbs Road, it's actually 10475, and I hope that plan right there says 10475 Grubbs Road.
Well, it's actually called the Blake Grubbs Plan of Lots.
Okay, so I think
So I'm not sure what that address
somewhere along
represents.
the line,
We'll get that, we'll check it and get it
Okay.
straightened out.
But the address would not dictate what happens on a subdivision. That's just how people get their mail.
okay, I just
We'll
wanted to
get-
make
we'll
sure
get
that
it
we don't
Emergency
get.
response or something.
Thanks for
Further
pointing
down
that out.
the
We'll,
path.
we'll try to figure out where that address
Is
is.
your concern that what I read from the sheet of paper that I was given, 10560, you're saying that is not what it should be?
That's not the address of that parcel, that's
Okay.
of that, correct.
And-
It's 10475.
Toby, did you just
Well, it seems to me that that perhaps the 10560 came from someplace.
It's my address, and I've been the contact on some of the things, and I think it just got,
Also, that
How do they
it's
get back to there?
What lot are you? What, just number one?
Pink lot.
The pink-
your country lane, though, you're not even Grubbs Road, are you?
Did you
Right,
make the
but-
application?
No,
Just curious.
no, I don't think you did.
I
Okay.
don't remember.
I'll check to see who did.
Okay.
I
got
think it was Mr. Blaine.
Not a problem.
We'll get it straightened
Yeah, I
out no
don't know.
matter what. Thanks a lot for pointing
Thanks
that
for
out.
that.
no
Thank you.
problem.
Good, we're good.
So lot 1 and 6 are actually going to be coming in off of Country Lane.
Yes,
That's how they access that.
that's all the access to properties.
Now, that will be approved or disapproved depending upon who's the vote on the 23rd, right?
Correct, come back the 23rd,
Right.
and, we'll be ready for questions if there are any at that point.
Just to, for the peace of mind, your first name, Ian?
Dana.
If I may, Dana, I'm Toby. For your peace of mind, when the chair says approved or disapproved, someone on council would have to stipulate what is deficient in the plan under our ordinance.
Okay.
They have to be specific about that. Otherwise, if everything's been identified and there are no questions, done deal.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Let us proceed then to item number 5, which is determine the candidate interview schedule for the town's implementable comprehensive steering committee. We're in the process of developing an implementable comprehensive plan, and this is part of we've received a number of applications. Did you want to,
Well, we had,
Spell it out.
we've talked about that a bit, just very briefly, but we have talked about the interview schedule. So to pull that all together here at the council table, there are 25 applicants. 4 of them have been interviewed within the past year, and so it doesn't seem that it would be necessary to interview them again, unless it's council's pleasure. But so at least for the time being, if there's 21 interviews, spread that out over the next 3 Mondays. And Marie is in the process of starting to identify people on the phone that are going to be able to come here next week for about a third each week.
you're thinking about a third on the 16th, the third on the 23rd, and a third on the 30th.
We would have to reconvene council's
probably.
business
Yeah.
meeting from the 23rd to
Right.
the 30th to continue this work, and then.
So if we added 15 minutes to each one of those, we could get a refresher with the 4 original candidates too, though.
If you wanted to have a refresher with those candidates, you would add 10 minutes for each person.
We had those 4 candidates are
You've been doing 10-minute interviews.
Ms. Appleman,
Appman,
Brian Appman, Brian Morith,
Brian Morith,
and
Deb Sagan,
Mr.
Sagan?
Singer.
and Jason Singer. Those 4 have been recently interviewed and appointed to something.
I did want to also make a point that one of the applicants on here is already on 2 committees already. So according to our appointment policy, that applicant would just make sure that they understand that if they were appointed to this committee, they need to give up one of their other
Which 2 are those,
positions.
Kim, please?
It's only one. It's only
one.
one person.
Which one was
person's
that,
that?
please?
Brian
The
North.
Well, keep in mind that anyone who would be appointed, if Brian were appointed as a member of the Planning Commission, which the Planning Commission has recommended that 3 of their members be on this ad hoc committee, I don't think that would, my opinion would be that wouldn't be a conflict. It would be just, it could be an extension of their work on the Planning Commission.
Since there are so many people here that don't have any positions, and if there's anyone else on the planning commission that would like to be on it, and that's fine, I mean, he can be on it, but he just has to give up one of his other appointments, I think that's according to our policy.
I'm not sure it is, but that's my opinion.
Well,
How
you're saying
many
it's-
people did he recommend, the planner? How many did he recommend?
About 15. We could go to
Now, how many did he recommend from the planning commission?
3.
So he recommended 3.
Right.
So how many representatives of the planning commission do we have?
Well, on this list, 3 planning commissioners have submitted.
One of them being Mr. Minor,
Who's the chair?
And he's gonna chair this committee,
He is.
so would we interview him for that?
It's up to you and it's up to him. I think some members of council have not, perhaps not met Mr. Minor. That's why I wasn't suggesting that he be bypassed from an interview, but it'd be good to know. Maybe he should come in and talk
And,
about what he sees.
Didn't you interview last time for the planning commission?
No, he's up for reappointment at the end of this
Okay.
year, so I don't know.
Well, we certainly can interview him. It's an important position, particularly contemplate he'll be the chair of the whole committee, so he,
He's basically on the committee.
Yeah, well, I
really,
understand.
When it comes down to it, unless he had three members that he would have did demur and not be part of the committee.
on this list, we have Dick Schnapp, Ted Meinert, we just discussed, and Brian Morth. Those are the three.
Those are three planning commissioners that
Now,
would like to serve on this
Mr.
committee.
And Mr. Morth is already on two?
He's on the planning commission, and he's a member of the environmental
Environmental,
advisory
right,
committee.
okay. And that, under our rules, would preclude him from taking on another committee, right? Is that
I
right?
don't know if the rules apply to an ad hoc committee. That, my thinking is that
Okay, well,
it's not a permanent committee, it's a
maybe we
temporary.
want to caution
temporary
him.
If I may add to this, the
Yeah.
planning commission is the one, the group that is responsible for the comprehensive plan. They're responsible for presenting it to you. So I see absolutely no reason why we shouldn't have at least three people, if not the whole planning commission, on the steering committee.
So
Rather
that's
than-
just a continuation of what they're doing.
And Kim, rather than excuse a planning commissioner who would be perhaps vital to this process, just add a person to the committee. That's not gonna,
Yet another person.
And we have also people who are from the other institutions.
there are institutional representatives, which was recommended by our consultant to have some.
Superintendent of schools.
Superintendent of schools is on, he has applied. And Dennis Blakely would represent institutional perhaps.
He's the
He's from
sanitary.
the sanitary authority. I don't know if there's anybody else.
How long does the steering committee,
It's about 15 months.
15 months? And most of these things are appointed for 4 years or something?
In most of the average lifespan of a committee appointment is 4 years. I mean, authorities are 5, zoning hearing board's 3.
I don't have my notes from the steering committee. I know they recommended 3, but did we change that to 2 from the planning?
You wanted it to be 2. You wanted it reduced to 2. The planning commission has politely responded by letter. They met on this at their meeting last week, that they really think there should be 3, since they are, as Bruce said, under the municipality's planning code, they're tasked with getting this done.
We have a letter. Did you see the letter in
I
there?
did see the letter. That's my opinion.
How about the schedule? Does that sound like a reasonable schedule?
What are we gonna do? Could we put those institutional ones on? We're gonna put them on anyway, and we have to, according to the plan.
Is the planner not, are these not recommendations to us? I mean, we're not obligated to go by every single thing that aren't they recommendations for
Well,
us to
Well, yeah,
make
but we
those
hire them.
decisions? Right, but,
And when you hire a person to do something, you kinda lean on him for his recommendations.
He made a solid point about having sectors represented, institutional sectors and business sectors in addition to citizens at large, plus folks who are already on board, the planning commission, and 2 council members is the way it was set up.
We currently don't have a meeting October 30th.
No, that's a 5th Monday ordinarily, we don't meet, that's usually a week off, but in order to keep things moving.
I'm going to see my great-grandson, that's why, that weekend. So I just made a.
No, I would have no problem skipping that weekend and moving it one weekend further. There be an issue with that for Greg?
It's your,
Well,
I would think we need the
Council
whole
should
town
set
council.
we have 2 institutional people who can give us something worthwhile. The superintendent of schools, obviously, and Dennis Blakely is a sanitary foreman, so it would do well to have somebody you would wanna know where the sewers are.
So you're saying that those two are guaranteed in, or?
I would say, why bother bringing them in?
Well,
We're gonna have enough interviews to have.
People may, I don't think interviewing people is such an overwhelming burden that it wouldn't be worthwhile to have people who perhaps don't have they're not as conversant and knowledgeable as the personalities involved. The superintendent, for example, apparently other people know the superintendent. To my knowledge, I've never met the superintendent.
Me either.
And so I think it's worth bringing them in. We don't have to, engage in the third degree for 3 hours or anything, but just to make a contact with a person, get a sense of what they're about. I think it's worthwhile. I certainly would, generally speaking, defer in favor of interviewing rather than excluding people that we think that don't need to be interviewed. It was met by total silence, but that's
I'll listen.
Yeah,
that's my view, and I think that's a
Waiting for
reasonable.
Jerry's response, but I agree with you, Bill.
Well,
Okay.
I think we're tying up a lot of time in interviews. Somebody that we're gonna appoint.
Are you
anyway.
gonna have these things at 7:30? I could be back by 7:30. It's only it's Philadelphia.
Yeah, why don't we can schedule the one on the 30th,
30th.
it's 7:30, because if you're gonna have 6 or 7 people.
Greg, what's the date that you have a problem with?
He's
The
getting,
30th of October. It's a Monday.
The
It's a-
30th of October?
Yeah,
he's
so
making
it's
it
a-
work right now, he thinks he
And
could
well,
be
but
back.
you'd be flying back from
No,
Philadelphia?
I'm driving, we're driving back from Philadelphia.
I mean, can you do that
A lot
without
of pressure.
Yeah,
subjecting
it's
yourself?
just a 5.5 hour drive.
If you want to do that, I certainly have no objection to that, but,
Well, I've done it before.
Yeah,
so-
okay, well. I mean, I've driven to Philadelphia many times, but it's as long as you think you can do it in a reasonable fashion and get
Yeah.
back here in time.
What is the harm between waiting a week, or?
Just getting it done.
So there's
To
no harm
accommodate,
lost some
to
time
accommodate
already.
Greg, I'm more than happy to,
And we have all the other interviews for the other committees
Yeah.
too, we have to do.
Right.
Yeah, we have a lot of interviews over the next
So
couple
it's
of months.
extending it longer, the interviewing process.
Right, but
And we're gonna be getting into budget process too.
well, let's just do it then, if to accommodate Greg. I mean, I hate to see you putting pedal to the metal for 5
No,
hours.
no, I'm not
He's
putting,
good.
that's a reasonable pace. That's-
Okay, well, it's up to you. If you think you can do it,
Right.
then why don't we just take advantage of that day? If you think you've got a problem,
If you start at 7:30, that's what I'm saying.
pardon me? Yeah.
why would we
Sorry.
start at any other
Why
time?
would we
I don't
start
know.
earlier? We wouldn't.
So you'd be leaving Philadelphia at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, something like that?
Probably in the morning, actually.
Okay, well, you got plenty, if you're leaving in the
Yeah.
morning, you have no problem at all.
Yeah. It depends on when my granddaughter, if she's back to work or not, so.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine. What else do we have on this? I think that's pretty much it at this point, right?
So the 4 applicants that we've already interviewed, are we going to give them an option to come in and refresh, or?
I think if you
Say
give them
you
the
have-
option, you're gonna have 4 more interviews, and that's up to them.
Right, I
Why
would
would
think
anybody
that they
decline?
would feel it would be more fair to them, if they were all fresh in everyone's memory. I can't speak for them, but if it was me, I would think that I would want to come in.
Steve, that's what I was saying before, and I maybe I didn't make it explicit enough. I think that given the number of people we have, given the importance of the committee, it is not, I don't think it's that an overwhelming burden on this to add 4 people and interview them.
Right.
There are people, I'm sure, on that committee that others may not know. For example, I've already confessed that I don't know well, does everybody know Appman?
I'm sure everybody doesn't. know
Sagan,
that.
I think everybody knows
Yes,
Debbie
yes.
Sagan at this point.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's quite, but if she would want to,
We know
That'd be
that.
you.
but if you want to be interviewed again, I'm all for it.
Why not? I like you guys.
Yeah, no, because it's a different emphasis,
Yeah, it is.
showing your different skills for that purpose.
Yes.
So I think we just don't exclude anybody, just interview them.
Yeah, they actually.
Then the other 20 will say, hey, How come I only get interviewed once and those other 4 people got to
Because
get
they
interviewed twice?
applied for a different position.
If they say that, we don't pay attention, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I think you're making a joke,
25.
right?
Oh,
25 interviews.
I'm
Okay.
saying it'll come up.
Okay, what else do we have anything else on this issue at this time, or we? Where am I?
Public comment.
What is that?
Public comment.
Yeah, I'm just looking, any comment from council? Any comments from the people in the audience?
Yes.
Ah. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry, real quick question.
Sure.
Marcia Caliendo, Mohican. A couple meetings ago that I was here, we were talking about the Vincentian project.
Yes.
The whole issue of tax exempt status came up, and we weren't quite sure if this property was going to be taxed or if it was tax exempt. And I was wondering if we ever came to resolution of that.
It'll be up to the county. It'll be up to the county assessor's office.
What are there other properties in McCandless?
Depends on the use.
Okay,
The county will evaluate how a property is used and then determine if it's taxable.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any sense for what this type of property might be? I mean,
I don't, it would
I know we don't make the decision.
It would probably be taxable.
probably taxable since it's independent.
Yeah, I
living.
mean,
In
it's
essence, an
it's
apartment.
basically an
but
apartment
It's
complex.
basically in a car.
I'm not gonna presume on the county.
I'm not, I already said that. God forbid we should do no, but I think a reasonable person could conclude that it would be taxable. That's, and subject to what the county determines.
Right.
Is that fair to say that?
I would agree with that.
Was it
Sounds
taxable
like-
before?
It sounds like a hedge to me.
I don't know, what was it taxable
They have
before?
plenty of hedges planned.
I don't think he
That's
heard you.
taxable
I don't think he
before.
It
heard
was a
you.
different type of use,
Was
okay.
it taxable
use.
Different
before?
use.
If there's no other comments,
Oh, different use.
that concludes the,
But it wasn't.
okay, that concludes the business of the zoning committee. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call to order the Finance and Administration Committee. Number 2 is Northland Library Executive Director Amy Steele is here to discuss Northland's 2018 proposed budget. She's also brought 2 other members from the library, so if you 3 of you would go up there, please. Yeah. Well, is this going to be enough for all 3 of them? They okay there?
well, they got chairs right there.
Three-part harmony, I think. It's on, it's fine.
Okay, so,
Unless it's, Marie, it's on?
thank you for inviting us here. I know I've met all of you before and been here in the past. I'm Amy Steele, Director of Northland Public Library. I've brought with me Bob Lukich. He is our Director of Finance and Support Services, and he assumed that role earlier this year. So he is, this is his first budget that we've been put through together. We also have in the audience here Santina Balistrieri, who was here with me back in April. She's our Director of Marketing and Communications. So, as I said, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come and discuss the Northland Public Library proposed budget for the year 2018. We have been working on this through our Finance Committee since June, and it was presented at various draft points since June to the full Library Authority Board. The Library Authority Board passed that budget at their meeting in September, at which point we advanced that to each of the 5 municipalities. And so I'm here to answer some questions. I do want to point out one thing before we move along. In our budget that we did submit, we had a narrative overview, and we have realized there is one error on that. In the very first statement, it says there's an total municipal increase of 3.43%. That is in error, that it should be 3.5%, which is what's reflected in all of the budget spreadsheets. So I just wanted to clarify that. So at this point, I'll entertain any questions you might have for us. And I also brought some additional information, if you'd like. I've offered to do presentations on the budget. In each year, I do prepare sort of a packet that goes along with that presentation. It gives some more detail and summarizing information about the budget, as well as some comparisons to Northland as far as services and costs and staffing goes with relation to some other comparable, or as close to comparable libraries in Allegheny County as we have. We are rather unique. We are in a unique size. We're the second largest library in the county, the largest being the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, which is much larger than Northland and serves an entirely different type of demographic. Then comes Northland. The next largest library in the county is McKeesport, which again is a very different kind of demographic and population served. So in my comparisons, I've used those two because they're the closest comparisons we have to size, but I've also included some smaller libraries that more closely reflect our demographics, and that would be Mount Lebanon and Upper St. Clair. So I will pass these around.
Is Mount Lebanon and Upper St. Clair getting a 7% salary increase?
I do not know that. They are probably still in the process of planning their budgets. We are taking initiative to increase our salaries because they are not meeting state recommendations that were put forth by the Pennsylvania Library Association. Recommendations we have are for 2015, and even with our proposed salary increases, our salaries for the benchmark positions that they use will still be below those 2015 recommendations.
Do you have anything here? I'm seeing something called staffing and pay on page 8. Is that a comparable?
So we do have, and all of the comparisons in here are taken from the 2015 reports that all public libraries are required to file with the state. The 2015 data is the most recent data that's available publicly. The state has not yet certified the 2016 data. So if you look at the chart on page 8 that refers to staffing and pay, I do have comparisons there that show our salaries and benefit costs per FTE, full-time equivalent employee. So you can see how the Northland staffing costs compare across those other libraries.
So Northland's open
And
the most hours.
yes, and we are open
Hours
most
per-
hours per week. We are open 69 hours per week. And across those comparisons, Mount Lebanon is the closest with 68. The others you'll see 65 and 60 hours per week.
The 69 hours a week is winter hours.
That's our regular hours. We do have shorter hours during the summer months.
One day or something.
Sunday.
Just Sunday, that's 4 hours difference.
Oh, it's only 4 hours on Sunday normally?
Correct. And the rest of the hours are the same. And you'll also see that the red line on that same graph shows the number of full-time equivalent employees per 1,000 of population served. So we serve, again, a pretty big area, and you'll see that the number of employees we have to serve that population is certainly lower than Upper St. Clair and Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh. We're pretty close with Mount Lebanon there. And we do have more than McKeesport.
So how many full-time employees do you have?
Full-time employees, we have 52 full-time equivalents. Our full-time employees is back on page, I'm going to give you page numbers here, page number 7. So we have 27 full-time staff, 46 part-time staff, and we utilize over 200 volunteers. We have actually found that having more part-time staff works to our advantage for scheduling across those 69 hours.
Amy, I just have a question on this chart on page 8. It seems self-evident, but I'll ask the question anyway, that Northland Library is shown in that blue bar to have, I don't know exactly where it would be, but 30,000 plus salaries and benefits for FTE. And
That's averaged across all of our.
yes, and then Mount Lebanon is all the way up at 60,000. That's a pretty significant difference. As a person in charge of Northland Library, what do you think about that?
That, most of that, I don't know the details of their benefits, but I do know they pay much higher salaries. I know we have lost employees to the Mount Lebanon Public Library over time.
Amy,
And that's people who are willing to commute, live in the North Hills and are willing to commute to Mount Lebanon. for
Across
that
the river.
salary. Yes.
Across the big river.
Amy, can you explain your 7%, please?
Yes, the 7% increase, we are using for a couple of reasons. One is to try and adjust our salaries to keep them competitive. Over recent years, we have been having difficulty filling, especially our lower level positions. We have had maintenance positions open. This is, I think, the first time in probably 2 years we've had all of our maintenance positions filled. So we're having difficulty attracting candidates when we post for positions. We just aren't getting the responses that we had in the past, so we want to remain competitive. We are also using part of that salary increase to offset a newly implemented copay for health insurance premiums. We have not yet done that with our staff, in large part because of the lower salaries. We've held off as long as we could. As the healthcare costs continue to rise, we feel we need to ask the employees to contribute 15% of the premium cost. So we are trying as best we can to use these raises to help offset that for this transition year, because we do not want an employee to actually end up taking home less money in their paycheck next year because of having to contribute to their health care.
What would a salary for a maintenance person be, since you brought up maintenance, a general idea of a salary?
The current starting salary is $12 an hour. And that was an increase that was made just recently to get it up to that.
I thought you were doing outside cleaning services.
We have changed that and added internal staffing because we were able to do that at a cheaper rate.
It saves us money, it saves us about $67,000.
Right, but you said before that you couldn't fill those positions before, but you didn't have those
They were out,
positions to
right.
fill,
Right.
right?
Well, maintenance, and so the cleaning positions also double as maintenance positions. So we've had existing maintenance positions to do building maintenance, grounds work, painting, minor repairs, some not so minor repairs, recarpeting some parts of the building, and a lot of that we've done in order to save money so we don't have to contract out for these things.
And when we opened those positions up, it took us about 5 weeks to fill.
I do have another sort of general question about what I would say generally be bookkeeping. Let me say before I make any comment at all further that my family and I personally use that library a lot. And I have nothing but good things to say about the people I encounter. They're extremely helpful. The people that sit in those desks and punch the computer keys, they've been very helpful, and I just give them high marks for whatever that's worth. And I thank them for their what I perceive as excellent service.
Thank you,
Now,
I will share that back.
okay, well, tell them that. Now, you're Bob, is that your name?
That's correct.
Bob, I'm Bill McKim. Are you like effectively the CFO for the library?
Yes,
Now, you're an accountant?
like, background, yeah. I've been doing it for about 25 years.
Well, that's a lot, but you are,
I'm not a certified public.
but you are an accountant. Okay,
That's
but
a
you're not a CPA, okay. Now, we've had discussion here in recent vintage, I hadn't really focused on it before, about the manner in which certain expenses are reflected in the books. And I realize and I'm not an accountant, so nor do I pretend to be, but there the issues such as reflecting capital expenditures, potential capital expenditures, reflecting the potential for expenses in the future. My understanding has been that you're in the process of evaluating prospectively what you ought to be doing, with a thought that maybe the books and reports that have been prepared thus far, that there's some room for improvement in those areas. Can you speak to that in general?
Well, that's a good point, and the one thing I would point out is on the percent change sheet, if you look at the bottom where the expenditures are, you see a lot of fairly large percentage increases and decreases, which sort of mostly offset each other for the most part. And the reason for that is because when I did come in to the library and looked at how the expenses were being booked, there was, it wasn't really organized very well. It was really hard to, to get information that grouped those expenses logically. Because they would, sometimes it would be booked in one place, sometimes there were basically too many accounts. And so what we're trying to do with this budget, which is what makes it a lot harder, is rearrange the chart of accounts as well in this process to get those things more functionally integrated.
What's included? For example, what I have in mind, I'm looking at, these pages aren't numbered, but they're, but the page that has other operating expenses on it, and then down below, I guess that's a line item designation, 159, capital expenses.
Right.
And we were discussing how capital expenditures are to be reflected, and it's an important area, and I thought there were some, and I don't want to say deficiencies, I'm not auditing the books, but I think I had the impression that there could be a little more, a little better explanation of what those are, so that they properly and fully reflect what's going to be spent. In other words, I've been told that there's contemplating some significant expenditures in the future. It seems to me that if we're contemplating expenses in the future, that ought to be reflected now as potential expenses, just like in any other business corporation, and not simply held by the current management of Northland Library. It seems to me that ought to be just spread out on the books for all the components, including Marshall and Ross. That's where I would be coming from. So,
If I may.
you may, please.
Okay. Typically, what we have presented to the municipalities, what I have inherited as director, and I've continued that practice, is to present an operating budget to the municipalities. We are in the process of working to create a separate capital budget, a capital expense budget. We have, we're working on that, and that's a work in process. Once we do have that created, we will certainly share that out with the municipalities. What's reflected here as our operating budget is what we need from the municipalities for 2018. We do have some larger projects that you alluded to that we're working on. We're looking to do probably in 2018. The first one is the HVAC. Our rooftop units need to be replaced, and our roof needs to be replaced soon.
Do you have any idea on pricing on that yet, or?
We're working on that, and we do have some savings to use towards those projects, and that's part of why that was not reflected in here in the operating budget, because we have those savings. We are also exploring options for other sources of funding to cover those projects, and if we aren't able to come up with that, we may have to alter those projects or push them off.
Okay.
Probably looking about 100,000 or more, I would imagine.
It would be.
Looking at more than
And
that.
what is your, what are the savings?
$500,000 in the capital fund.
So you have 500,000, so you can cover that.
I still haven't heard, and maybe I'm not listening well enough, but operating budgets in general, obviously you have to have an operating budget to reflect what you're spending on an ongoing business basis. But similarly, it seems to me you need, and any organization needs a budget that reflects capital expenditures. If you think you're gonna have to spend, $15 million on a new plant and equipment, I think you just can't ignore that. You have to say, well, we're gonna have to spend that money, we ought to have a reserve or have it reflected on the books somewhere. So I think that's where some work's really gotta occur there, so the books are reflected of,
So that
you
we
know.
can include that component.
Well, that's right.
Going
Not just-
forward into the operating
Not just,
budget
well,
that
not,
feeds into.
well, hang on, but not just, excuse me, I didn't mean to
Okay,
talk
I'm
over
sorry.
you. But not just an operating budget. I mean, I think you have to make the real distinction between the operating budget and the budget, and the contemplated capital expenditures.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And
and-
that's what we're working on doing.
Okay.
That hadn't really existed before.
Yeah.
And so we want to be sure we're not missing items that should be included in that. We had discussion earlier this evening too. We're looking at maybe splitting that out between equipment and the building needs, so that, we can easily identify, those different components within that capital
Yeah.
budget, and
But
then
that should
those
be
needs would be reflected.
generally
back
accepted
into-
Accounting principles would contemplate those categories, at least those categories. And I just think we ought to do it. You seem like you've recognized and identified the problem.
Absolutely.
And so that the books, when they're presented to the various municipalities, in our case, that support the enterprise, they ought to know exactly what the contemplated capital expenditures are gonna be.
Sure.
So, I mean, it could be eye-popping, or it could be fairly minor, but whatever it is, it ought to be reflective. If you're gonna put HVAC equipment on top of the building, that ought to appear somewhere in the books. That's all. And I think that's really all I have to say on it. I think from what I understand, you recognize the issue and are taking steps to correct it, and that's great.
Yes.
Is the roof leaking?
It has been, yes.
Not current.
Would you also explain, question last week was the decrease in the health
The
costs?
decrease in the overall health insurance costs is because of that 15% copay that staff would be asked to contribute towards that. And that's a fairly standard practice out there. A lot
It's
of,
not in healthcare. Our health insurance has been slashed and we got not a penny more for it. That's been across everyone that I know. Pensions have been
Yeah,
cut.
teachers.
Healthcare has been, deductibles are going up, premiums are going up, and there's been no salary adjustment.
But she's talking about a copay for a
I'm
contribution by the
talking
employees of
having
15%, which is
employees
getting pretty,
contribute towards those premiums to
That's-
help reduce our costs.
that's
That's
pretty
a fairly
significant. 15%.
Standard practice.
Yeah, our copays are going up.
Right, but if I understand correctly, you're increasing people's salaries to help offset those
Because
additional
of this
costs that they're
transition
having.
year.
Right, but I'm just saying that maybe it is in the library world, but that isn't standard procedure in other work areas, is those costs are going up and there's no adjustments in salary.
But what she's saying is their hourly wage is so low.
Right.
So I think you have to kind of
Right.
take
And
that into
when I was
consideration.
referring to standard practice, I just meant having the employees share that premium cost and making
No.
contributions towards it.
Do you know what the national average is, or the average percentage of budget that goes toward employee costs?
I do have a chart in here that addresses that. Page number. Back near the end. We start from the back and work forward. So the last two charts, what I have on here is the county average on page number 11. Page 11. So you'll see again the same comparable libraries that I used. Again, this is based from 2015 data, which is the most recent that is available from the state. And so you can see the dark blue bar there is the county, ACLA is the Allegheny County Library Association. So that's all the public libraries in Allegheny County. You
So-
can see that, and I think it was about 68% there.
So your salaries are lower than a lot of other folks, but your proportion is a bit higher. It sounds like it means that you're spending less on some other aspects of your operation. Is that right?
I would say that would be accurate. I would think the collection is one part of it. We are mandated by the state to receive state funding to maintain 12%, a minimum of a 12% expenditure on our collection. And we are hovering right around that 12%. With this budget, we're trying to get that a little bit above 12, so we're looking at 12.4% for 2018. Some libraries do spend more on their collection than that. And some other costs too. I think they've done a pretty good job of keeping costs down in some of the other areas.
I think we all tried to save you some money on your storm pipe. Not looking for any credit, but everybody, that was kind of neat how that worked out. Everybody chipped, all the other municipalities chipped in.
Yes, that was.
It was good. That was a nice cooperative effort. And I reminded Mark to send me our bill.
Anyone else have any questions for?
I just have one more. Look at that page. On page 11, it shows Northland, if I'm reading this right,
I think that's
the bar chart there that shows salary, wages, and benefits as a percentage of total operating expenditures. Northland's 70%, and
slightly over 70.
right, 70, and that means the salaries, wages, and benefits are 70% of the operating expenditures. And
I think it says 75.1 in your.
For 2018. This is all, page 11 is based on.
2015.
2015.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, but
State-
it's
the state data.
70,
And there have been
75.1 now.
studies, the Public Libraries Association, I know I'm giving you a lot of these association names, but that's a national division of the American Library Association that covers public libraries. And they also gather data across public libraries. And their 2015 summary report did note that there is a trend across libraries nationally that since 2008, and again, they saw that reiterated in 2011, that the increases for salary expenditures are increasing at a higher rate than the increases for the materials. So they are seeing nationally a trend since 2008, and again reinforced in 2011, that libraries are spending more on their staffing than they are on.
Amy, I was about halfway through my question, and somehow I got diverted here, or was diverted, my point was, on that chart at page 11, Upper St. Clair's got 80%, for example, and then you flip to the one on page 8, and Upper St. Clair's staffing and pay. What's the correlation between those two, if there's any at all?
I don't know that there really is, because it also depends on all of their other expenditures.
Yeah.
So the number of staff.
Right.
Now, my question, piggybacking off Bill's, is why when Allegheny County averages have been added in with on page 8? Since we did it on. Why wouldn't we have just added an extra bar for like an Allegheny County staffing and pay? Or an averages?
That could be done. I was trying to keep that one to our comparable libraries because of the population served and the sizes of libraries, because I think those things do correlate to that.
McKeesport has a comparable population?
Their size of the library, yes. The three largest public libraries in Allegheny County are the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, Northland, and McKeesport. So they're the closest in size. I mean, they're
Right, but
only
the
three
size
large
of the
libraries
building,
that large.
that's not
It's-
by population, is it, or?
Some of it is by their population, yes. By the
Keysport has
population that they
shrunk,
serve.
their population has shrunk.
Yeah, I thought they were
Used to
hurting
be-
for people, half their buildings were empty.
But their population, at one point, I bet you when their library was built, their population was greater than it is today.
I guess a question that I have, and I don't do budgets, and I don't, know all the things that you're considering in this, is it seems to me, with $500,000 in your capital account, and needing a whole lot, what, we said the roof was gonna be 100,000?
Somebody said.
More than that.
More than
Oh,
that.
okay, all right, so you have enough in your capital account to cover it, then, it looks like.
We
And
would
the
have enough
HVAC.
probably to cover the roof, but not in the same year as the HVAC. The HVAC replacement that we're looking to do, we've been exploring, and that's why we're still gathering numbers and data on that. We're looking to install a different kind of system rather than just replace the one that we have, because we see that as an investment over time because it will have significant energy savings. So over time, we would recognize much more significant energy savings. And we don't have enough in that capital savings to do both the roof and the HVAC project at the same time.
Would it be better to, instead of this 7% increase in salaries, would it be better, since you need all these improvements, to gradually increase those salaries instead of just 7% all in 1 year, especially when you've got these needs that are pretty urgent?
I think the salary need is urgent as well. In 2006, before I became director, the library board hired a consultant to realign our salaries and our position grades and establish midpoints and minimums and for those different ranges. And that was a 3-year phase-in project, and that ended in 2009. And from 2009 until 2016, there were no increases in those minimums and maximums for those position levels. So we're trying to play catch up. And
What was the salary increase in 2016?
In 2016, what was done was a 35 cents an hour across the board increase. In 2017, it was 15 cents across the board increase. So those were done, just kind of across the board to start increasing those numbers. We're also very concerned. We're trying to phase in increases for the minimum wage. We don't know what's going to happen. Eventually, we do anticipate that minimum wage is going to be increased, and we're trying to take steps to start moving that up. Our plans at this point, with the increase that we have outlined in this budget, would take that minimum wage up to $8.25 an hour, which is still...
The increase, though, for the
still
minimal
conservative.
position on the 7% is going to be like 85 cents or so.
I'm sorry?
The increase on your if you've got minimum wages of $12,
That's for our maintenance.
well, but it's starting, is that,
We have...
there's people that
at
make
least
less than that?
We have 2 grade levels below the $12 an hour level. So, I mean, just recently, if you saw in the news, Target is talking about starting to pay their entry-level people $15 an hour. We have, I should have looked at this, but probably about 4 pay grades below that level.
Or you have wage pressure, even Giant Eagle in the newspaper, we're talking about pretty significant, 500 people are going to be hiring.
I mean, I'm not a numbers person, so that's why I'm not really contributing, but if you remember, when we came in April, we were showing you guys the numbers of people that we're reaching in the community, and the fact that we did a survey 2 years ago, and people are asking us for more and more programs, and you need people to run those programs. And if we're gonna ask our people to pay for things that they didn't used to have to pay for and not increase the way that they're gonna pay for them, we're gonna get a lot of employees who are gonna be finding other part-time jobs and potentially leaving. And so you're gonna be left with a community that's asking for things that we might not be able to deliver on. So we just don't wanna see it come to that, and that's why we're here tonight. And I'm not a numbers person, so I don't know anything more, but I wanted that to be part of what you consider as you look at these numbers.
And we've realized higher hiring costs by not having those, not even just the turnover, but having to post positions for a longer time. That all adds into a higher cost of hiring.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
Thanks,
We
Amy.
appreciate
Good
it.
seeing you, thank you.
Thank you. We move to number 3,
What was the lady's name that's leaving?
Santina.
What's her first name? Santina? That is her
Santina's
first
her
name.
first name, right.
Yeah, that's my real name.
That's
Santina.
her real
right.
name.
You got a high-class name, that's great.
No, that's
Okay.
a Sally.
Moving to number 3, review a resolution setting dates of various meetings of town council and town boards, commissions, and authorities for the 2018 calendar year. You have in your packet the dates.
We sent a revised version out in your folder and posted it on the website, Marie, right? Under B, we did not put the exception for May until this version here that says the business meeting will be on the third Monday in May, because the fourth Monday in May is Memorial Day. And under H, for some reason, when Marie and I were putting the initial draft of this together, we thought that the Environmental Advisory Committee would want to meet on the third Wednesday of November, but I don't think you do, because I don't think they do, because that's the Wednesday
Did you
before
wanna change
Thanksgiving,
it? Yeah.
so that wouldn't be a good idea. So there's no reason there's no exception for the Environmental Advisory Committee. It's the second Wednesday all the way through the year. Those are the only things we caught. Everything else seems good.
I understand conceptually what you just said, but I look at Environmental Advisory Committee, it says the second Wednesday of each month at 7:30.
Yep.
Where did the other,
This is the new, this
This
is
is
the
the
oh, you're
revised.
looking at a former
Yeah,
one,
we-
I got you.
we-
You
The
corrected,
version we put in your folder on Friday
I got you,
had an
I got you.
exception
I'm
for
with you now.
some reason.
This is a corrected version here, I understand.
We double teamed it and we missed it. Somebody still completed the pass on it.
Anyone have a question on it?
I think these are all right, because I went through them all this afternoon.
Follows
Put them
our-
in my
follows
hand, in the calendar.
our schedule, usual schedule.
No further questions, we'll move to number 4. Notification that a resolution is required to be adopted to authorize the 2017 allocation of general municipal pension system aid.
Joanne, if I made just a quick comment tonight,
Yes.
there's a protocol that we follow. There was a resolution passed as a result of collective bargaining with the police. And so we're going to follow that resolution. We're going to send out the details of that. We were waiting for one last invoice from the pension consultant, which has arrived. And so we'll provide this information. The resolution has been put together, but there's a backup memo. I want to make sure it gets in the packet for next week.
Okay. Anyone with a question? Okay, we okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, number 5, notification that a motion is required to approve the termination of the deferred retirement option pension and the retirement of Lieutenant Thomas E. Nebel? Am I saying that correctly?
Yep.
Effective November 1st, 2017.
Yeah, Lieutenant Nebel of our police department has sent us a letter to cease the drop that he entered on last year. So this would be on our business meeting agenda. It's just a ministerial act, but it has to be.
Notification.
It has to be approved by the board so that his pension can start in November.
Okay. And number 6, seminars and conferences. We have Manny and Napier is holding a seminar on October the 17th at 5 o'clock Station Square. If you are interested in attending, you need to notify Marie, please. There's also a fireman's dinner on November 18th at
6 p.m.? At
right,
Chadwick.
6 at the Chadwick. And again, you need to let Marie know if you will be attending.
Actually, that'd be Melinda. That would help.
Melinda be
she's
better?
keeping those
Okay.
reservations. Give
All
Marie a
right, so
break.
we'll go
6
with
o'clock,
Melinda.
Joanne.
Want to go
6.
to that one? Is that what you're saying? All right.
Okay. Any other comment by anyone on council? No? Any comment?
Going
from-
back real quick to
I'm
Nebel,
sorry.
do we have a replacement for him, or do we have to
We'll have to select somebody.
hire
off the list.
someone new? But he's retiring on November 1st,
Right.
and we haven't picked anyone new?
No, you would have to huddle. You selected 3 of 5 off of the list that we have. The list is still current. So you would have to interview X number of people. I think
When
this
we
would
went to
be
that list that we
one
had.
additional person.
When are we going to,
That was another interview to schedule.
right, but I mean, wouldn't we think we want that officer or lieutenant ready for the first?
Well, we want to have a lieutenant ready, that's for sure. But we'll have to.
But
go
we
through a
were just
testing process.
notified,
But
right?
to get another person on board, another interview to schedule.
Does
We
it,
need to do that fairly quick, right? Shouldn't
We'd be
we?
all right, we'd be all right, sure.
is the total, are the total workforce does not necessarily increase, does it? I mean, because he goes a lieutenant, well, there needs to be a replacement in the lieutenant's ranks, is that right?
To advance someone to lieutenant will take some time. There's
Well-
a testing procedure and so forth, advertising.
So we would do that in-house then, probably, or?
And the personnel board interviews first, and go through the same process we do for hiring, basically.
And they,
If we decide there's another lieutenant.
So we're going to be one officer basically short for,
For a short while.
well, however
You do have
long.
an active list, so that's a bonus. You could have someone in not too long, a period of time,
2 months,
less than that.
I think.
2 months max. You should have somebody by December. Just fitting another interview here.
Any other comment from council? Comment from the audience? No comment? I adjourn the.
We are,
Oh,
I
I'm
was just
sorry,
gonna
I
say,
didn't see you.
Yeah,
are you
well,
going?
I apologize. When to
I'm
comment.
sorry.
I was actually, sorry. Debbie Sagan, Parkland Drive. I had questions about the library, and I know they've left, but I didn't know.
they're right
She's right
behind
behind you.
Oh, Amy, thank you. And these are just, I really appreciate what you do and what you serve and coming from social
questions
service.
okay, or a
Like
bunch of
background
comments?
as well, yes, I'm sorry, I showed
What's
yours
that?
too. I just wondered, is there an, and I appreciate that you're trying to pay your employees a fair wage. And I wondered, are there funding resources available that the other libraries are getting that perhaps Northland hasn't tapped that you're, and these are kind of rhetorical questions, maybe some things just to think about, and council as well. I don't mean to address Amy, but since she's here, sorry. But
can work the
that
room.
was one thing I thought. And then also the healthcare, and I know nothing about healthcare and how that, those cost equivalents work, but perhaps would it make sense to pay the employees that healthcare, just pay it, and then not have to raise their salaries? You know, just it's something to explore. I know healthcare costs are astronomical, but somewhat balancing out, and I've found, maybe, I don't know, it's different for everybody. So that was something to explore and think about. I don't expect you to be able to answer this tonight, you know, they're kind of just things that I had come to while you were speaking. And also, from those, you might know this one, there's 52 equivalent full-time employees. Are they all professional staff? And it sounded like they were paid per hour rather than salaried employees?
There's a mixture. We have some that are salaried employees and some that are hourly employees.
Okay, and I don't know where to go with that, but I just wondered what the breakdown was and,
The full-time employees are all salaried employees. On the part-time, there is a breakdown, a mixture there.
so do you have, I would, and you don't have to answer this either, but I would just wonder how many resource librarians, you know, how many children's librarians, how many real professional staff? And that's just a question.
That's on our website in our
Okay.
annual report. You can look at our
Oh,
annual
okay.
report from
That would be
from
good.
last year, and that's all on the website.
And when you compare the libraries, as far as McKeesport and Mount Lebanon and Upper St. Clair, is that comparison, and this might be in council's documents, is that comparison based on size, square footage, collection, number of employees, or just a conglomeration of all those things?
The size is generally based on the service area, the population served.
Okay.
The others were some demographic comparisons. There is no library in Allegheny County that really is comparable to
Sure. There
Northland.
are.
So I'm trying to pull different aspects of comparisons.
thinking about funding resources, because I did do grant writing and maybe there's, and it looked like RAD, you have RAD, and you have the big sources. But I just wondered if the other, maybe looking at the other libraries, they may have something. And I noticed that utilities were a big cost, a big percentage of your cost, and it sounds like replacing some of the deficits that you have now will help lower those costs as soon as. So, as council said, I would think that should be done as soon as possible to, help out too. Thank you very much.
Before we end, I forgot to mention this. Amy and I discussed that this pamphlet that she gave you, we are in agreement that she will present this to council in August each year, so that you have this, and if you have questions or whatnot, that she would be able to answer. So that will be, something like this will be coming out.
Before we adjourn, Toby, do you happen to have an idea on how many employees the police force actually has? I imagine they have secretaries.
29 sworn officers, we'll have one less for a short while.
Right,
With the lieutenant's retirement.
but beyond that,
And 2 civilians and 6 crossing guards.
then they're
There's a budget for a part-time person. The chief was looking to, he had asked you to put in a budget last year to help with cover vacation times and so forth. And he has not moved on that.
So you're talking an average of, say, 35?
6 part-time crossing guards, 29 officers, and 2 civilian administrative assistants.
Right, I guess the crossing guards are probably less than 20 hours a week, average of it.
And that cost is shared by the school
They
district
pay
as well.
half, the school district shares this.
Yeah, I was just surprised at the size difference in employees to the library compared to the entire police force of the township. Because I was thinking, like, oh, there couldn't be many more people than.
They have a broader mission.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
For me.
Then I adjourn my committee.
Okay, thank you.